Majestic Theatre opened on Flag Day, June 14th, 1929, and it was one of the first air-conditioned buildings in San Antonio. Opening day patrons didn't really quite know what to expect because the air conditioning had been touted so much, so a lot of the women showed up in fur coats in June. It limped on until about 1985, then closed, and there was really a lot of doubt as to what was going to happen to the building. There was even some discussion of demolishing it and building a parking garage in its place.
Jossie Strauss and an intrepid group of men and women were charged with the responsibility of saving the Majestic back in the late 80s. City Council, Arts Center Enterprises, and Las Casas Foundation came together to raise the necessary monies.
The people and the pride in this community for these theaters is just amazing. This theater was $3 million to build back in 28, 29. So it took us over $4 million to restore it. We had an event after I gathered enough money together, and it was quite amazing to me that we filled the Majestic, 2,500 seats. People all came for the dark, lights down, the last performance in this theater before it was restored. And some of the same craftspeople's families came back. The plaster men, the Battersbys, were the original plaster people. The grandfather was deceased, but the son and the grandson came back and worked on this restoration project. It was fabulous. The wood that you see is not wood. There's a lot of it here. The only part that's really wood is the banisters. The rest of the wood, the coffered ceilings, all of this beautiful woodwork is plaster. So it was all done, and it was pulled by a broom to give that look of wood.
The theater was built in the time of movie palaces, and the architect for the Majestic Theater was John Eberson. Theater owners really liked John because his buildings were relatively inexpensive. Everything was plaster. We had a saying when we were doing the renovation: if it looked like wood, it's plaster. If it looks like metal, it's plaster. If it looks like a roofing tile, it's plaster. If it looks like plaster, it's plaster. He developed what was called the atmospheric style theater, and that's the theater, the kind of theater where you feel as though you're outdoors and you're surrounded by some sort of an exotic environment. For a place like San Antonio, something that was based on Spanish Revival design was the obvious way to go. The decor is made up of architectural bits and pieces, but they're put together in a way that really, it's more like a stage set. What he consciously did was try to make it so wonderful and with so much visually going on that you couldn't absorb it in one visit, and that you had to come back again and again and again, and it worked. People did come back again and again. It's a fantasy palace. You really can't take any of the architectural or the design elements inside seriously. It's just, they were put together in a very, very beautifully conceived and beautifully blended together, but it's all fantasy. It's all make-believe. I have been told seriously by people who should know better that said, when I went to the Majestic, you go in and you're outdoors. And I said, oh, really? Yeah. And well, how do you account for the fact that it was August and it was cold in there? Well, it was so real that people really did feel that you were outdoors. That was reinforced by the stars in the sky, which are nothing more than recessed lamps that have blinkers on them. The architects were very sensitive to color. If you saw this theater under work lights, it is just incredibly garish. You just can't believe it. But it was designed in such a way that under typical theater lighting conditions, everything had color to it, but the color was muted, but yet it was there.
One of our greatest achievements is that in the lobby, during the movie theater era of the Majestic, the so-called Sweet Grapes statue and surrounding architecture was removed by the theater owners and replaced by a popcorn and candy stand. One of the things we wanted to do was restore the Sweet Grapes alcove, and it is a beautiful restoration.
What's unique about the Majestic is that it is the only atmospheric theater that is left in Texas, and it is, by any standard nationally, it's a great example of the atmospheric theater style.
We owe Jossie Strauss and that original group of folks who believed in restoring a theater rather than tearing it down, of restoring the historic site rather than replacing it. We owe them a great debt of gratitude. So it's quite a historic theater, and even today, when we bring big shows like Lion King, for example, and kids come in that would not ordinarily come to the Majestic, and they come for their first time, and you hear them exclaim, "Look, Mom, look, Dad, I can see the stars, or I can see the clouds," or they're so astounded by the beauty of the theater even at their young age. But those of us who appreciate restoration of things as opposed to destruction of things appreciate the tremendous effort that went into the redevelopment of this project, not only from the standpoint of restoration, but it's been an unbelievable economic impact on downtown San Antonio. The redevelopment of Houston Street, the redevelopment of downtown San Antonio started with the decision to preserve the Majestic. The restaurants that came, the hotels that came, all came because people were coming downtown and coming back downtown.